sometimes getting what you want isn't exactly what you need.
According to me, why expectation grows is because we don't want to be responsible, but we want the power. Hello, guys, welcome back to another podcast of the Thakkar Show. Today we have Robert from a podcast called "I'm Probably Wrong About Everything." I had done a podcast with them regarding their whole COVID-19 series where they are going and reaching out to people from every country and talking about how COVID impacted them. So I was lucky enough to be able to represent India in their global journey, and soon our podcast will go live on their channel as well. So go and follow them on every social media. Link will be there in description. And talking about our today's podcast is majorly about our conversation and takeaways from history, not only from India, not only from Canada, but throughout the world, because history is one big thing which we have as the legacy, and that is one of the most important learnings we can ever get. So, without wasting any further time, a very warm welcome on the podcast, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay. It's an honor and a privilege.
Thank you so much. So, you said you have done a bachelor's in history. So, what was your most fascinating event in history?
So I would say that my undergrad, yes, was in history, and I focused a lot on Latin American history. So
Mm-hmm.
the United States and Latin America, that was a big focus. I also did quite a bit of Chinese history. So uh, 20th century Chinese history. So sort of the period out of the agrarian sort of Chinese history into the communist country that it became today, and sort of the great transformation that happened there. Uh, Another one that I'm quite interested in is sort of the history and the consequences, the legacy of colonialism that happened in Western Europe. So not just in England or France, but also Portugal, Spain, all that stuff. And I find it interesting how Christopher Columbus discovered the new world. I mean, did he really discover the new world, or had it already been discovered? And why is it that European countries are the ones that, sort of have the last say in what history is, right?
Mm,
So at
true.
least, obviously, in Canada or in Western European, predominantly formerly Protestant countries, the calendar is very uh, Eurocentric, right? And the way we
Mm,
see things is very Eurocentric,
mm,
and I understand why that is, but that's not necessarily the reality. And when we talk about history, it's we shouldn't be looking at isolated events.
mm,
Everything that
true.
happens echoes into today and echoes into tomorrow.
Mm,
So the Battle of 1066, the Battle of Hastings, where the Normans took over England, and it it stopped being a Saxon empire and became an Anglo-Saxon empire, or excuse me, a Norm a Normatic England, excuse me, and that changed the history, right? And that's why English became the language that it is today. I mean, before that, they were speaking in all kinds of different
true.
Gaelic tongues that were influenced by the Gaelic languages. And again, my show is called "I'm Probably Wrong About Everything." This isn't, you know, my professional expertise, but this is just some of the reading, the writing that I've done, of course. But my point being is that everything that has happened has led us to today and is leading us to where we're going. And we can't see the world in isolated. It's no longer an isolated event. I mean, I'm talking to
Mm,
you. You're in India. The only thing that's different between you and I is the time change. We're able to have a
yeah,
shared conversation that never before in history could we have had so easily,
true.
so seamlessly, right? And I
True.
think it's a wonderful thing. But if this is where we're going, we do have to see the world. there's a degree of collectivism that needs to be required. Not saying that my history is insignificant or that yours is insignificant, that we all have our own unique cultures, but we have to be aware of other people's cultures and of their histories if
True.
we want to go in the right direction. That's my belief.
True, 100%. And talking about the Eurocentric part, which you said, because even in our education system where we are taught history, what the issue with this is because England was majorly
Yeah.
colonizing every country 200 years before, and because of that whole colonialism from British, whatever history was written, it was only written by Britishers because they were ruling the land.
Yes.
And that's why in whatever situation happens, they had their final say, and they had their final say till the day they
Right.
left the land. And that is the reason why we get most of our history as uh, majorly dictated by Britishers, majorly dictated by England. But still, the amount of growth which we have led, like you said, now we are having this conversation seamlessly. Now, if we would have been dependent on our
Yes.
history,
Yeah.
if we would have been dependent on our history, which is not written by our own, which is not written by people of our own land,
Right.
then would you think from whatever study you had, would you think if we would have blindly believed, or if we would have blindly accepted the history which has been written by Britishers, could this be possible? Could the evolution in terms of technology, in terms of
Yes.
global
Yeah.
awareness would have been possible?
Well, have you ever read the book Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond? Excellent
No.
book. See, you
Mm.
don't need to go to university to learn things. You know what I mean? You don't need to go to
Mm-hmm.
university to find out, okay, there's some things in the world that are kind of problematic. In fact, university can dictate how we learn and what we learn, of course, right? Because we're
True,
taking
true.
specific courses. Whereas if you teach yourself, you read the books you want to read. I also challenge people to read books that they don't initially want to read. Books that you're like, you kind of flinch when you see the title. Try them out. Try them out. If it's really tough, try the audiobook. Like I heard one book, and it very much flew in the face of what I believe. And I'm a pretty open-minded person. And I tried it and I was like, oh my God, like the message of this book is just, it's not, it was very much in the vein of cancel culture. And that's something that I'm against.
Hmm.
I'm so against cancel culture because it actually creates extremism. It created the reactive extreme right that we're saying. And I'm going on a tangent. So let me go back to your question. My apologies. It was about, would we be where we are today without the advances of European powers? And the truth of the matter is that if it wasn't the European powers, if it wasn't Christopher Columbus, it would have been somebody else. It could have been China. It could have been Africa, right? It could have been the Middle East, because for a long time, predominantly called the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, which is a funny term, the Muslim, because it was only dark for the year. Well, I mean, yeah, that's a biased term, but it wasn't dark for the Muslims. They were living in a period of extreme kind of growth. They actually controlled Spain, I believe, until like Charlemagne came in, Charlemagne the Great from France, in like the 9th century or something like that. Anyways, point being is that in history, there's always periods, it ebbs and it flows. I do believe that Eurocentric powers are seeing a decrease, a destabilization in their concentrated powers. I mean, excuse me. Look at what's happening with the Queen right now, with the royal family. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so much flack going on there. And to be completely honest, it's like, I think that's a little bit misdirected, which is rich coming from me. Somebody who doesn't necessarily understand it nor care to. There's a lot of things happening in the world that, in my opinion, are far more important than the royal family. That said, like, why is our attention being so directed to that? Meanwhile, there are real problems that are happening in the world. Humanitarian problems, I might add.
True.
So to answer your question, I agree with you. If it wasn't, say, the Western European countries, it would have been somebody else eventually. And that's what Jared Diamond talks about in Guns, Germs, and Steel, is that certain countries have advantages, and not countries, but cultures. Certain cultures have advantages, such as agrarian advantages. In Western Europe, it's a very fertile land, fertile soil, that they were able to make advancements. And then religion came around, but then there was the Age of Enlightenment, and they said, well, let's go explore the world, right? Whereas other countries, China, had kind of this closed mindset and said, we need to focus on ourselves. We need to keep people out. And that was their decision. But try as you may, globalization cannot be stopped. So Trump's idea, just to kind of pull it back, what's going on, this idea of nationalization, of we're just going to strengthen ourselves, we're going to focus on our own economy, produce our own thing, does not work. You need to look no further than Juan Perón, Eva Perón, and what happened in Argentina, and how there was the nationalization of the railways. So they bought their railways from the British, who had owned it, and put their country in a huge deficit just so that they could own it. But then the consequence was they were removed from international trade. And I know there's a lot of people in the world that talk about the earth being flat, which is ridiculous in a geographical sense. But in a geopolitical economic sense, the earth is becoming flat. We all are going back to
explain this point more profoundly about
the flat earth.
Yeah.
So you and I are talking right now seamlessly, and we're having a shared conversation that reaches across international boundaries, borders, right? You and me, we're talking we are on complete, if we were playing four-corner soccer, you would be on the northwest and I would be on the southeast, and here we are talking to each other.
Yeah.
A shared conversation. My point being is that we all have an equal, with the internet, we are all kind of coming to the same place, to a similar place. The problem is that with COVID, the 1% or whatever, like, not to sewer the guy, but Jeff Bezos, Amazon, they're making so much money that the divide, the chasm between them is growing, but only in terms of finances. In terms of the intellectual divide between people, it's not so far, because we are having this conversation, right?
True.
I mean, those who choose to have it, the divide, we have the same opportunities for intellectual property, not the same opportunities financially speaking, right? Which is obviously problematic. But that's where we're going with the flat earth, is people are kind of looking and saying, why is it that I live this way and they live that way? Like why is that? People are just starting to ask questions. And I think that we've seen this in history with the invention of the printing press. The internet is the next evolution in human history. Truly, that 100 years from now, 200, 300, whatever, years from now, if we survive, of course, as a species, because that's what we need to see, is that, you're from India, yes, I'm from Canada, but we're human beings. That if we can kind of see our humanity in each other across the spectrum of culture and color and gender and all this stuff, all these things that we get so bogged down by, if we can see that we're human beings and treat each other as such, we do have a chance of survival. But if we keep doing this kind of castigation that we do as a society, that we do as our human nature, right? It's not just white people that castigate. It's not just straight people or Christian people or Muslim people or whatever. we all have the human propensity to other people, you know.
True. 100%.
And if we can get over that, we stand a chance in our next step in where we're going. And the internet is really bringing that. So
True. 100%. And what internet has done in this sense is that whatever, like just imagine if before COVID, if we would have planned to have this conversation, either you have to come India or I have to come to Canada for that.
right.
And because of this, what has happened is everyone, like everyone has reduced some percentage of the carbon footprint as well. Like, because if I have to fly
Say that one more
everyone
time.
everyone had reduced some percentage of their carbon footprint,
Right.
because I had to fly to Canada or you had to fly to India.
Right.
You have to fare a taxi. You have to live to a hotel. You have to again go back. You have
Yeah.
to again fly back. And now everything, if every amount of carbon footprint which we would have had, everything is reduced.
I agree.
And
Yeah.
not only just us, majority carbon footprint of majority people has reduced, because what they have shifted to, like the fitness revolution which has came due to COVID, the global fitness revolution that everyone has, because everyone was so conscious about sitting home and getting obese, everyone has started doing something now. Now if they have to go nearby to buy something, rather than going on a taxi or doing something else, they just go and walk by, or they just ride on their bicycle.
You raise a very good point, Jay. So media is such a fascinating thing because media is short for medium, right?
Yeah.
Medium, like the way something is shown or expressed. If we don't think that for time immemorial that there's been an agenda to what is being shared and shown, then I do think we're fooling ourselves. What is religion, right? I believe in God. I sincerely believe in God, but I don't think that I have a hard time thinking that animals, which is what we are, can fathom the inconceptual nature of a deity. You know what I mean? Like the fact that we're like, oh yeah, God looks like my Uncle John with long hair is insane, right? Like that's why certain religions, such as Buddhism and the Eastern religions, right, are coming into the consciousness of the West, because it's like, you know what, that actually kind of makes more sense. We talk about the chakras and things like this. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're coming to a zenith of intellectual understanding. It's almost like Star Trek. We're almost petering on the precipice of where we're like, I don't give a shit who you are as a person. Let's work together. Let's just work together. I mean, let me rephrase that. I care about who you are as a person. I care deeply about who you are as a person. In fact, that's what makes you unique. And this is what makes me unique. And if I'm going to let who you are as an individual get in the way of us doing something great together, then I'm an idiot. Do you know what I mean? I'm an idiot, right? If because you're, you're Muslim, or because you're Sikh, or because you're atheist, if that's what's going to stop me from talking to you, then I'm an idiot, right? And I need to get over that, because that's in Star Trek. They don't get stuck in those things. They get stuck in the fact that there's an artificial, intelligent, sentient force called the Borg that are trying to take them over, and they're like, "Hey, we got to work together, right?" So, where am I going with this? I guess my point is that the media wants us to it wants to redirect our attention. And if you look at, like, for example, I mentioned China and how they made this leap from the agrarian sort of society or culture that they were into what they are today, which is a technological they're a superpower, right? But they did that in the course of like 20 years, roughly, called the Great Leap Forward. That resulted in the unfortunate death of millions. Now, the United States is a fossil fuel burning powerhouse, and you talked about the carbon footprint. They need to make a leap from being a fossil fuel, powerhouse to being something new, something completely innovative, something different, a technological powerhouse like India is becoming, right? Like China is. They need to make that leap. But can they? Can they? They are. The United States of America is in a very, and this is, don't take this from me, listeners, please. I'm not the professional on this. But the United States of America and Western powers are at a very dangerous place in their history. They need to make a leap. The leap that maybe perhaps you and I are already making by us having this conversation. I have more in common with you, Jay, than I do with my neighbor. Think about that for a second. I have more in common with you because we're having this conversation than I do with my neighbor. Do you think my neighbor wants to talk about this stuff with me? Hell no. She wants to renovate her kitchen. She wants to have a vaulted ceiling. She wants to live comfortably. But comfort betrays. Comfort betrays. And it's going to take a whole hell of a lot of discomfort to get to where we need to go if we want to survive, history. That's what I think, but please
And I
correct
think
me if I'm wrong.
history has also taught us that whatever kind of boundary you have, either it be white, either it be racism, religion, or whatever thing, I think the lesson which Indians learn from their independence is same. Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, everyone united just to make the land free.
Yes,
No racism that you are white or I am black, so we won't be able to work together. No, we worked with different countries. We took help from them. The father of Indian Army, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he worked with even Germany so that he could help India get free. The only aim was to get India free, get India independent, regardless of the person was Muslim, regardless the person was white, regardless the person was of whatever religion.
Yeah. That's just like, if that's what's stopping us from going to where we need to go, that is what's stopping us from going where we need to go. Like, oh, don't talk to him. He's a Catholic. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? You know what I mean? Like, really, what does that have? Like, it's when someone tells you a joke. So, I was on the airplane and this guy, he was Asian. And you're like, okay, what does that have to do with the joke? Or what does that have to, you know what I mean? Like,
True.
if you are friends with somebody, if you become friends with somebody, you don't think to yourself, oh, that's my Indian friend. Like, that's my friend.
Yeah.
If that person is truly your friend, it transcends this. You know what I mean? Like if we didn't have the shell, we would all look the same.
100%. It's just that,
virtually speaking, yeah.
Yeah. Continue.
No, don't, Jay. You go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was saying that it's just that we need to understand that many people just lose their hope because they say that the person in power is not good or the person in power will not allow us to do something. I'm just asking you that for example, let us take any country. Let us take hypothetically a country who has population of 1 million, who has army of, let's say, 100,000 personnel, and whose president or whose king, let's say, is something who shouldn't be, or who doesn't deserve the power. Now, don't you think 1 million citizen, if they would just bang on to king's place, whatever amount of military power he uses or whatever amount of security power he uses, he won't be able to escape 1 million people, because the power of unity they have, they can rule out anybody at any point. And that is the main importance why democracy is is spreading all over the world.
True democracy. Because I'll be honest, democracy, let's talk about here, for example. Canada is a beautiful country, and I love Canada. I love it because I can have this conversation and I could say, Trudeau, who's my prime minister, the leader of our country, I can say, well, he's an idiot. And I'm not going to get taken out back and shot. You know what I mean? Like there is freedom of speech here. Now, with the, okay, sorry, let me stay focused on this because I can go on tangents. But democracy is an ideology. Communism is an ideology. Fascism is an ideology. All these things are ideas in the mind, but their execution is always imperfect. Democracy is imperfect, but I will take democracy over how communism on paper is a wonderful idea. You know what I mean? Marxism, great, but it doesn't work. I have a hard time thinking that it could ever work. When you have an organized country, going back to your example of this imaginary country with 1 million people and 100,000 army, 10% of the country being an army, like, whoa, that's insane. That's a massive army. But anyways, there will always need to be it's like when you play a game of, like when you watch kids, you learn a lot from them about human society.
Yeah, true.
Right? Okay, guys, here's a soccer ball and you organize it yourself. Well, what do? They get captains. They pick captains. Otherwise, you're going to have some strange melee, just kids running around kicking a ball and there's no organization. So you do need leadership to have an organized country. It can't just be chaos. I don't think you can. I guess Thomas Hobbes talked about this in Leviathan. He was a Western philosopher. He talked about, without democracy, without order, life is nasty, brutish, and short.
True.
Right? Meaning that in our nature, and we talked about this earlier, but it is in our nature to get stuck up on things like religion or the color of skin or whatever. But when we actually get to know one another, that's when we realize, wait a second, you're thousands of miles away, but I have more in common with you, Jay, than I do with my neighbor. Think about how, because so long in history, we always were meant to see countries as others, like these famines that are happening in countries where millions of people are starving. We kind of, in our minds, we're like, oh, that's over there. We distance ourselves. But I can't distance myself from you. And that's just the way of humanity, is that we are all humans. We are more alike than we are dissimilar.
100%. And I think that the dissimilarity part is nothing but, I mean, just imagine that taking that example of soccer ball, that we need to elect a leader so that automatically the group of children gets organized. But if we allow students to elect leaders, the amount of chaos which will erupt when external person chooses a leader versus students themselves selecting a leader, the amount of chaos while children selecting leader by themselves will be more than the amount of chaos generated when an external person will come and select leader
Like a
among the
teacher.
children. Yeah. And that is the reason why we have these differences, because we as humans, no one has come or no one has given us any hint that XYZ person will be your leader and you have to organize yourself around the mentality of what that leader has. We all need to come together and then select a leader to get organized. And this is the reason that everybody wants to be that leader.
Yes. Now hear me out for a sec. So if you watch the kids, they want to play soccer, right? Because they want to play soccer, they want to play the game, they want to get going. They don't even really give a shit about the captain. It's like, whatever, just you be the captain, you pick the people. Let's get playing this game. versus the teacher who's like, okay, Johnny and Jeff, you guys are the captains and you pick people. And you're saying that people are fighting to be the captain, but what if the captain is just another player in the system? Like, I'm kind of almost formulating my own idea as we speak here, but if we're all playing the same game and the captain is just to pick people and say, this is where you're going, or like, you're on this side, you're on this side, essentially, like, this is your role, do this role.
Yeah.
Then, and they just want to get on with it. Like, let's play soccer, right? But when you're telling people to do what they don't want to do, that's a problem. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it makes sense.
So I think what I'm trying to say is that in our life, like, life is such a gift. It's a privilege to be alive. It's certainly a privilege for me,
True.
And I need to ask myself, am I doing what I want to be doing? Right? Because life is, if you're enjoying your life, it happens very quickly. That's how wonderful it can be. And also it can be very difficult and sad, like, you can't summarize what life is, but my point is that if you're doing what you want to be doing, you're living your purpose, that's what you need to be doing. And we all have a purpose.
True.
And I know that sounds very, like, lofty and like, like I'm a hippie or something, but I do believe that we are a species that's meant to connect. So we need to connect more, and we need to not be trying to, like, dominate or control others. But then like, as you say, as we mentioned, well, how do we organize it? There has to be a leader.
True. The problem is that while we have the responsibility of electing a leader, we forget that if we give the leader majority of powers, we still have the power to re-elect the leader.
Which is democracy, yes. Yeah.
I mean, not only democracy, we took that example of the nation, that isolated nation who has
Right.
a million. They had a king. The king was not elected by citizens. The king was dissented. But still, if all citizens want that the king should be changed or the whole system should be changed, the organization should change, they still have the power to reorganize and shift powers.
Right.
Just imagine if,
Right.
I mean, this is a simple concept. Like, let's say a football team. A coach selects someone as captain. Now, if every player disagrees that I don't want this person as my captain, what can a coach do? Coach has to change the captain. The problem is we forget that we have the power to re-elect a leader.
So what I'm kind of hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that as a society, as a group, because we are tribal in nature, we can get kind of a little bit lost in the weeds of our individual power, but not actually seeing our collective power.
True.
Like, if 100 people, so what's more powerful? One pissed off person. So you go to a store and you have a customer, you have one upset customer, right? What's more, and they're like, wow, this is stupid, versus you have 100 upset customers.
True.
What's worse, right? Obviously the 100 customers, because your primary means of surviving is money. It's like, if you lose a customer or whatever, you could get 10 more. But if you have 100 upset customers, there is a degree of numbers, I guess, and that is kind of, again, that's that sort of Marxist approach. And that's why we have to be careful with cancel culture, is because mobs are dangerous.
Mobs are dangerous because you don't know that what exactly a mob do. Mob has particular agenda, they work for it blindly. The problem with people who are not in the mob is that they don't understand the hidden reason or the hidden agenda of the mob. Either they support it, either they ignore it. The solution is to make them understand, or to at least understand them. Just imagine there's an upset mob of 100 people in our isolated country. Now what should the king do? Should king kill 100 people, or should king sit with that 100 people and tell them that why are you upset? Or if not king, the other 1 million citizen can sit with the mob and ask them what is your problem, what solution can we bring
Yes.
as a community to you.
The other thing is, in history, you see this, but there's the problem of rising expectations. So if, say, you had a king, this king example again, and he's like, no internet, no internet. There will be no internet. And people are like, we want internet, we want internet. Okay, fine. You can have 10 minutes of internet a day. What's going to happen? They're going to want more, right? So that's why, man, it's like what we're talking about, trying to encapsulate it in an hour is just, it's impossible, right? But yeah. People are going to always want more. Like the mob, people are always going to want something more until there's, and like, think about here in the West, anything that we want, we can pretty much have. Like, we have hot showers, we have food. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have the stats on it, but we have higher suicide rates. So I'm not saying there's a connection there, but I'm wondering if there's a correlation between sometimes getting what you want isn't exactly what you need. I can speak, I'll speak to my own life. Man, I have everything that I need, but yet I still want more. Like, I live in a townhouse. I don't live in a mansion, right? The reality is, once you get the mansion, what the hell are you going to do with all that space? I'm going to have 15 rooms. One's going to be a Hot Wheels room. You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do with all that space? So going back to this monarch, it's not being greedy with power, but it's so easy to be greedy. Because again, I think that's kind of we like to hoarding. Hoarding's a big thing in the West. Like, if I showed you my closet, you'd be like, what the hell are you going to do with all those shirts? You'll never wear all those shirts. And you're right, because I won't. But yet I have all these things and I'm attached to all these things. But yet, we're not.
According to me, why expectation grows is because we don't want to be responsible, but we want the power. And it's because that
absolutely, that's a great point.
I am like I have a leader, so it's that my responsibilities are over. Now, because as a citizen I have power to demand something, I use that power to demand something.
Yeah.
And because I don't have any responsibility on demanding and giving things, I'll just ask blindly what I want, what I think.
Think about like mental health. I work as a registered clinical counselor, and think about mental health and power. Like, I go to the supermarket to pick up stuff, and say I want to go in like my pajamas. I don't do that, but say I wanted to, and then imagine, like, I just want to go there and get out, like, not bump into anybody I know. But if you have a lot of power and you have a lot of clout or whatever, and everywhere you go, people are like, oh my God, look, it's the monarch. Look, everybody look. Kids, look, oh my God, right? Imagine if that's who you were, that would mess up your mind.
True.
And you nailed it on the head, is that we want power, but we don't want responsibility. But you can't have power and not have responsibility. It's impossible, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Spider-Man, great film. You're right. We want it all, but we don't. You know what I mean? We want it all, but we want it on our terms. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. So, in terms of consciousness, it really does come back to these Eastern tenets of Buddhism and just like being grateful for what you have. Like,
True.
man, the fact that right now I have a fireplace in my house. Look at that. I have a fireplace. You see that? And I have a dog. But yet I want more.
True.
What more do I really need? You know? So,
100%.
and that's why these conversations are so important, because really we're challenging ourselves. And hopefully, you know, my hope is that we're helping listeners to challenge themselves and to think, right? That life, you know, are you familiar with the band TLC, the hip hop group?
No.
Okay, well, there's a song called Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, don't go chasing waterfalls. They're endless. They don't, you know, like
True.
you win the race the day you stop running. That's not my words. That's Bob Marley. Beautiful, amazing mind. But we win the race the day we stop running. But the problem is that people are always running. But running to what? Oblivion? You know, because like we said, you could have it all and still be empty. You could have that mansion,
100%.
and all the stuff that you collect is just collecting dust, and then you die.
True.
So how do you want to live, right? How do you want to live? And I think that's
the people lack in defining their own goals or defining their own selves. It's because everyone is so fascinating. Like, I want a mansion. Okay, it's good you want a mansion. But what will you do after that? How will you arrange it? You know, like if you have $1 million to buy a mansion, you will also have cost of 100,000 of building interiors, building furniture for it, managing it, and you don't define that. You say that I have $1 million, I'll buy a mansion. Okay, cool. After that, what? You have to pay bills for its electricity. You have to pay bills for maintaining it. You have to pay bills for gardening it. You have to pay bills for furnishing it. No one defines that because everyone wants to live in those fascinating world, and when it breaks down, they go in depression. They break themselves down. But the problem is that they don't define their dreams. The problem is that they don't want to pinpoint into an actionable things. It's just that because I want to live my dream. You have to make your dream a reality by pinpointing what you want to do next.
Two questions for you. First one's a quick one. If I gave you $100 million and I made it public to the whole world, I just gave Jay $100 million. How many people do you think would be expecting or asking for money from you?
20, 30 people.
Well, you know what? But if I made it completely public, this is Jay. Jay, I've given you $100 million. Everybody, world, Twitter, Instagram. I gave Jay $100 million. This is what he looks like, by the way. Great guy, wonderful man. How many people do you think would be asking for handouts? Jay, listen to my dream. Listen to this, blah, blah, blah. It would be overwhelming, right?
True.
And so that's kind of the thing, is that sometimes what we want, what we think we want, and then we get it, we're like, oh shit, I didn't think this one through at all.
True.
Right? And the other thing is then you're right. So what is your purpose? What is your goal? What is your goal, Jay?
Through this podcast, I just want to I want to build an idea economy. Because like I said, people live in fascination. People say that, oh, I'll get motivated after listening one video, I'll do my work, I'll go to gym, I'll do my workout. Next day I'm making everything gone. It's because you don't have defined that why you're going to gym. You could have defined that I'm going to gym to impress a girl. I'm going to gym because I need to get fit. I'm going to gym because it requires me to be medically fit. It requires me to get rid of a disease. We haven't defined it. And just imagine if you If you say a person that, hey bro, if you don't go to gym, you're gonna get heart attack in 1 month, that guy will not need any motivational video. From the next day he'll start going to gym.
I
Why?
mean, that's a
Because he's going to die after 1 month, because
yeah,
now his goal is defined. He has to go to gym because so that he can get rid of this disease, this obesity.
right. Yeah, and going back to what I said, excuse me, pardon me, going back to what you said is that we want power, but we don't want responsibility. But you can't have both. Life, life is power, and there's responsibilities that come with it. You have to take care of yourself. If you don't
It's just
take care of
like if
yourself,
you
you
if you
got
want to climb the Mount Everest, you also need to have the power to balance yourself at the tip.
yeah, and you
You
need to
you, you
prepare for
cannot
that
lie
climb.
you cannot lie down on tip of Mount Everest and just stay there forever. You need to have an oxygen cylinder with yourself. You need to have the capability to go and survive at that highest peak.
Also, think about that. Let's say Mount Everest is the peak of success. Like we're all trying to get to Mount Everest. Okay, that's great. You get there. You, like, what if you look around and there's nobody there? It's like, oh shit, I really was missing the point. Life is not about you becoming the greatest of all time, this uber mensch or whatever. It's about, to me, it's about community. It's about bringing other people up. When you succeed, I succeed. When I succeed, you succeed. You know, that kind of like you raise people up. You can't raise everybody up. It's impossible.
It's simple, no? Because if I get successful, to whom
Mm.
will I throw a party of success?
Exactly. Yeah. And chances are the people that you're throwing a party are
They
they're
they
there
might come and
because
assassin you.
yeah, or they want to use you, right?
True.
So who are your true friends? You know what I mean? Who are your true friends? People have to
And we
consider
need to
that.
understand it just by thinking of the presidents and prime ministers of our own country.
Hmm.
Whole country loves them because they've elected them, but still they need a personal security. Why so?
Yeah, yeah. Good point. I, I think that, you know, again, we started talking about history, and imagine if we can go into conversations with an open mind and an open heart and be detached from our ego. I think the world would be a better place. Now, is that to say that Rob, am egoless? Absolutely not. I still get defensive. I still get reactive. I'm working on those things, right? But if we can go into like if I can talk with a person who's an atheist and a Christian, you know, and then I have my views, and nobody think that they're right, but they just want see that's the difference between Western conversation that I noticed at least is that two people are trying to be right and the other person is trying to be wrong. It's like a boxing match. Whereas in some cultures, like I've noticed in Eastern cultures, they want to understand each other, if that makes sense. They want to
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
each other. It's not like, oh, Jay's right. It's more like, oh, I see, Jay. That's a really good point. Yeah. And then I integrate that into my understanding and into my world.
true.
So when we kind of see each other as like, it's like this, it's not like this. You know, it's not just me giving or you just giving to me and I'm like, oh, give it to me, right? I want it all. I'm a troll. I'm an intellectual troll. It goes both ways.
True.
And I think that's the key is understanding. So,
That's how society has even evolved. Because if I would be just me, if then why would I have my tribe? Why would I have my group of friends? Everybody needs, everybody wants that. I should have a friend like this. I should have a friend like that. But when it comes to their own self, when it comes that should I help this person? Should I help that? You always go on your selfish mode where just I want to be successful, me,
Yes.
then how can you have those friends?
Well, to me, excuse me, I wrote an article.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I wrote an article called "Competition versus Cooperation." I can send it to you. You can share it with your people.
Yeah, sure.
But
Link will be there in description.
yeah, of course. But think about that. There's a balance between both. If Jay, I love you, man. You're my friend. Sometimes competition can make us both better. Like we're gonna fight. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna have a healthy competition to see who can get the most listens in a month or whatever, right? But because we're doing that, man, we're building each other up, right? Because I want you
The
to be
important
successful.
thing, the important thing in this competition is I am happy even if you win.
Exactly. Nobody's losing, but we're actually like that healthy competition. But when it's like, again, there's that troll, right?
Yeah.
I just want it. I want it for me, right?
When
Then you
when I
get
when I
there.
get sad of your success, the competition is never healthy.
Exactly, right? And
Even
you want to
even
see
though even though even though if I say that, hey, congratulations, man, you got this much place. Congratulations, you got this great guest. But inside, I'm like, does it deserve it? Don't you think I'm more
mm,
deserving than him?
hmm
And the problem with that is when this thought comes in our mind, we neglect that why Robert got this person. What
right,
has he done? Has he mailed that person? Has he connected with him? Does he has a common connection with him? I try to neglect those factors. And because I try to neglect those factors, I even reduce my chances of getting that same person on board.
right. Yeah, because it's I always bring it up to Castaway. Is no man, no person, excuse me, no person can live as an island. Friendship, relationships, connections, to me, that is proof of God. That's
True.
proof of God. Like a friend of mine passed away recently, and man, I've just been like weeping, like crying, like a baby child because I miss my friend. And that's the impact. Like I can't even fathom it. That's the impact of someone who I chose to know what they had on me in their passing. And if that doesn't tell you that we're meant for something more than ourselves, I can't tell you what is. But people who get all this success and they're so rich and it's all about them, if you don't think right before they go to bed, they fall asleep, that they're like, shit, I'm empty and I'm alone, then you're wrong. Think about, again, going back to why do people in why does it seem like there's a higher percentage of suicides in Western countries? Again, I don't have the facts. That's what I'm that's where I'm at to believe that
That's from
suicides
your
are higher.
experiential bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now, Jay, I am just realizing the time here. So it's 10 o'clock and I told my wife that I'd only be an hour. So, and it's always a fast hour for me. So
Okay. It's completely all right. We'll definitely have part two of it. And what I think that we can have part two as a live session so that even we can interact live with our audience.
I would love that. Yeah.
Sure.
And,
We'll.
and, and I, and sorry
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
interrupt. I do want to say thank you to your listeners for listening to me and my rants. And I want to thank you too, Jay, for this. And I've enjoyed it very much. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope that it even helped you to think about some topics, and
Certainly
let's
did.
bring this on to part two, and let's have a live interaction with our audience.
I would love that. I would love that. Thank you very much, my friend.
Sure. Thank you
Okay.
so much for joining. It's my
Okay.
honor and pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.